Chrys, my man, welcome to the Football Excellence Podcast. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out. I appreciate the invite. Gave me the chance to talk with you guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, there's craziness going on. Obviously, I think we're both quarantined. I'm in Mexico right now. You're in Florida. How do you see this playing out as far as the coronavirus's impact on the sport of football, via recruiting, via the future of programs? I mean, it's really disrupting the entire sports industry as a whole, right?
It is. It's insane, man. And I mean, Florida's kind of, it's not as big of a hotbed as New York or California, but we got locked down last week with the stay at home. So I mean, anything that's non-essential, and I don't know why, but they think football is not essential. So
can't figure that one out.
Yeah, I have no clue. But I mean, it's just crazy because I mean, this time you would be getting ready for spring ball. I mean, everything's leading up into that. So I mean, you can't come in contact with anybody. I mean, it's tough. It was tough to begin with, just trying to stay 6 feet away and all that stuff, maintain your distance and coach, which that's completely possible. But now they have it to where you can't go anywhere. And I mean, all parks are shut down. I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah, it's tough, man. And the uncertainty of it all is really, I think, what stresses people out the most is how long is this thing going to last? When are they going to start opening things back up again? And for athletes, particularly, you touched on the college programs. I mean, this is their time for coaches to be able to see if their young athletes can step up and perform. They're going to try to test them out at starting positions. They're trying to get a feel for what their team is like, see which plays and which sets work with which players and which and against which types of defenses or offenses. And programs aren't able to implement that right now. So how do you think that's going to affect programs this fall, if there is even a season this fall?
It's almost going to make it like the NFL, if you would, preseason, because I know for us with spring was like, it was the time to test out guys and see who would step up, rise to the occasion. But also, if you're trying to put new wrinkles into your offense or into your defense or try different things here and there, I mean, you're not going to get a good look at that. So, I mean, it's going to be tough, man. I mean, it's putting a damper on, I guess, the evolution, if you would, for programs themselves.
Right. Just for programs, athletes, coaches, the spring is their time to get better and to set the stage for the fall. And, without that period, I mean, like you said, there's going to be a preseason, so to speak, of real games in the fall for college football where, they're getting the kinks out. There's going to be a lot of turnovers, a lot of lack of discipline possibly.
Exactly.
It's going to take a while for these teams to get comfortable and really settle into the season and perform at their highest level.
Correct. Which, I mean, maybe that's good for some teams because, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you want to start off decent. And, I mean, when you get into play, you're going to kind of hit your prime, hit your stride, but you don't want to peak out too early. So, I mean, it goes back to the teams. I think you're going to see a lot of moving around as well. Because you're not gonna. I don't think the coaches are really going to be comfortable with the guys that they have, unless they just have returning guys. They're not going to be comfortable with the guys that they have in those positions.
Right. Well, and to that point, teams with veteran players, with juniors and seniors, they're going to be far better off than
Right.
teams that are young guys. Because again, that spring period is a chance for them to evolve, for them to get coached up, for them to be in the starting lineup and prove their stuff.
Yes.
And without that opportunity to learn, you're just behind the curve as to what normally athletes are used to. So,
absolutely.
and even from the standpoint of high school recruiting, that's really going to be a detriment to many high school athletes out there who usually utilize this time to go to camps and to go to see coaches in person. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. This is normally the time where you have of course, you have the juniors that normally hit the camps. And when I was a recruiting coordinator at one of the high schools that I coached at, and this was the time for our last minute guys, like our guys that didn't have a lot of film. This was the time where we drive that home, just reach out to as many guys as we could. If you had top prospects that were committed to like a mid-major school, and they winded up going higher, they winded up getting a scholarship to a bigger school, those slots opened up, which it opened up the slots for the smaller guys, the guys that didn't have that film, for them to actually get in. But without contact, there's nothing that you can do at this time to try to push that any further with those guys. So they don't have a last ditch effort anymore.
Right. Well, I think we both understand the value of these college scouts and coaches being able to see these kids in person, and
For sure.
It's just depending on how long this thing lasts, it's really putting those coaches behind the curve, and kids who run for 340s but maybe don't have the same film. Those kids are going to be hurt because they aren't having the time to go test out and see these coaches in person. And this coronavirus is just rocking our world on every facet. Just imagine if the NCAA or the NFL seasons are canceled this fall. The amount of money that will be lost.
That's crazy. Like even to think about that. We think about the the time that we're kind of coming out of right now, how weird and crazy it is not to have football. And to not have it, like when it's football season, it'll be insane for sure.
For sure. And enough about the coronavirus for now. CV, we've had the pleasure of working together over the past couple of years. You've been able to travel internationally. You came to Mexico with us several times. We had an awesome time. Tu español es muy bueno.
Sí.
And so, Chrys, talk about your let's just start off by talking about internationally. What is your opinion, and specifically about Mexico? What was your opinion about coming down here, seeing the athletes, seeing how massive the sport really is here, with the 30 million NFL fans, 100,000 plus athletes, and the fact that the sport's been here 100 years? Like, you can see that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's eye-opening every time I go, and that's one of the reasons why I like going. Just outside of coaching, is just to have that exposure and to see how the sport has progressed over since the last time I went. I think that there's so many hidden gems in Mexico. I think it's ridiculous, and it kind of stinks because it's Mexico, and they are just anywhere. It's not that it's Mexico; it's that it's not the United States. So
yeah,
you automatically I don't know if you're as good as, but there are some talented players in Mexico and all throughout the world, and it's crazy. You would not think, especially if you don't travel. And you haven't gotten out there to see it. There's no you don't know how much is actually out there. There's a ton of football.
Yeah. I mean, just for example, when we were in Chihuahua in the north of Mexico a year and a half ago, Miguel Salazar, 6'6", 310 offensive lineman that could move,
absolutely,
was fully capable of playing Division I FBS in the U.S. And we actually had some interest,
100%.
And those are just hidden gems that, people don't realize exist in Mexico specifically.
Yes.
I mean, Europe is a little bit more developed. You got groups like Gridiron Imports that are sending dozens and dozens of Division I athletes from Europe each year. But rather in Mexico, it's still up and coming, even though the sport's been there for a longer amount of time. But when you think of Mexico, you don't think of giants. When you go to the north of Mexico, you got some giants.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, you might even think about quick guys. And there are there's a few guys that they got some speed on them. But like you said, when the first thing that you think about in Mexico is not that they're big. But I think that's what makes it so much sweeter when those gems are uncovered. It's like, oh my gosh, you are huge and you can move. That's crazy.
Exactly. Well, so getting into more about offensive line specifically, what are the characteristics, Chrys, in your opinion, that make a dominant offensive lineman? I mean, you performed at the highest level at Tulane, and later got onto the Jags training camp squad. And what's the difference between the highest level caliber offensive lineman between just a mediocre offensive lineman at the collegiate level?
So honestly, I don't think it's any different than any other position for the most part. I mean, offensive line play, I would relate it probably closely to quarterback, just because there's so much intellect that goes into that position. So obviously you have to be able to handle the material. You have to be able to handle the calls. You have to be able to think, switch gears on the fly. It's not something that's just automatically gonna happen. So you got to be able to switch gears on the fly. So have that intellect. But like I said, it's very similar to the quarterback. And I always tell my guys, if that's something that you want to do, you have to perfect your craft. You got to own it. If you don't want to play at a higher level, that's fine. It's a recreational thing, and that's all good and well. But if that's something that you want to do, you got to perfect your craft. And that's working day in, day out, learning the little intricacies, learning how you can communicate better with the other four guys, communicate better with the quarterback. Like I said before, understand that switching on the fly, that those quick switches that happen. If a guy walks up on the outside, then he's going to blitz. So all of those little things kind of make that big difference. Out of the different levels, if you got a guy in high school, you got a guy in college, you got a guy in the NFL. They all bust their tails. The biggest difference is going to be speed. As you step up to different levels, the speed it increases so much more. So jumping from high school to the NFL, there's no comparison. But those stair steps, and that's what it is. It's perfecting your craft.
Well, and that's what's been crazy to see over the years is how at the NFL Combine, the 40-yard dashes and the mobility of giant offensive linemen has gone down significantly. I mean, you got guys in the 4.6s, low 4.7s now. Like,
right?
How is that possible? How are these big guys moving like that? And like, what's caused the transition for these offensive linemen to continue to get more athletic? Because guys weren't running those times 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Right. I think just training overall. I think that training, it's just like technology. Training is evolving year by year, and trainers they're perfecting their crafts. That's their job. They're getting paid to make guys faster. So they're doing all the research, all the muscle stimulation with fast twitch muscle recovery. I think that's huge in it. I know when I was playing, it was very common for you to pull your hamstring during any kind of run, just because big guys, you didn't run. So I mean, you quick 5 yards maybe, and like I said, anything past 20, you might pull a hamstring. So being able to recover and being able to and I did it when I came out. I did it was basically track training, sprinter training, knowing how to come out the blocks, knowing how to rise so you're not popping up all at one time when you're running your 40. That's part of it as well. So I know they do a lot more sprinter training with the big guys than they used to 10, 15 years ago.
Well, and along those lines, it seems like now college coaches specifically are taking more projects on guys who are slimmer coming out of high school that are 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", that they can convert to that tackle position specifically.
Right.
And, if you're taking a slender guy and putting weight on him, in general, he's going to be faster than the massive dude who's thick with big bones, who's already there previously, right?
Correct. Yeah. That's definitely, and the other thing that you get with that is multi-sport athletes. So if you got a guy that plays basketball, that plays football, that maybe runs track or plays baseball or something like that, those are the guys that you want. Those are the guys that that they're not just playing football and then going and sitting on the couch for the remainder of the year, but they're active. They're actively doing things. And like you said, it's a lot easier to put weight on a slimmer, tall guy that still has that big frame than it is to try to take a big guy that's already 330 and try to get him to cut back and slim down a little bit. So that's definitely the way that it's going.
Well, and as a pretty boy skills guy, receiver on the edge, what is the motivation of offensive linemen? I mean, how do you motivate yourself? At a skill position or a quarterback position, you're in the limelight more. So, you're scoring touchdowns. Your rewards are very visible and tangible. Whereas at offensive line, you're creating opportunities for other people on the team. As a young athlete, how do you coach kids to say, listen, like your job is just as important as the guy catching the ball, because without you, there's no him? And how do you develop that mentality over time to just breathe it, live, sleep, breathe this mentality of I am an old lineman. My job is to create opportunities for others and, hang your head on that.
So that's something that even at the camps, when I go down to Mexico, it's something that I definitely talk about, just because it's hard, man. I mean, for the young kids, especially the younger kids, because that's what they see. They see the cameras that are on the TV, and the guys that are in the cameras are the guys that have the football. The guys that maybe they dropped the football, but they're still on the camera. They have the opportunity to catch the ball. So it's hard to pull guys' focus or pull kids' focus away from that to it's like, hey, you're gonna be overworked. You're gonna be the first person on the field. You're gonna be the last person off the field. You're not gonna get any credit for anything that you do, and you're gonna get blamed. Maybe if it's not your fault, you're gonna get the blame for it. It takes a certain type of person to be able to do that. That's your offensive lineman. From time to time, you kind of have to talk guys into it, but a lot of the times it's just who we are, man. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's all about the team and that guy, that pretty boy that's out there trying to catch the ball, and he's got a corner coming down screaming, trying to knock his block off. Well, that's the chance that we get to go KO somebody. So I mean, it's definitely it's like I said, it takes a certain kind of person to do it, and it's something that that you can hang your hat on. That I mean, it's your job, and
right.
And the team cannot be successful without you.
That's it. It's that simple. It's that simple. And
absolutely,
you know, we always used to joke in college about how the offensive linemen are just a little bit different, you know. So you know, I went to the University of South Dakota, so a lot of our offensive linemen, you know, were from the country. Hick boys coming from the farmer, homegrown, strong dudes, strong,
exactly.
thick dudes. But they were just a little bit different. And, you know, to be that selfless, you know, sometimes takes a little bit of an extreme personality to embrace that offensive line culture of I'm doing this for my guys.
Right, exactly. And that's why again, it's something that I always preach is the relationships. Not only just between the other four guys, because obviously the 5 guys that are up there that are going day in, day out, hitting all the reps. Those 5 guys, but also, like I said, the quarterback. That's your guy, and that's the guy that you got to protect. And it weighs heavy when he gets popped, and it was because of something that could have been prevented.
Right.
It weighs heavy on you. So building those relationships, that's what makes them care. It makes you really care about the guys that you're on the field with.
Absolutely. Well, and so, you know, who is one of the best coaches that you ever had, and what was his philosophy that stuck out to you, and why was he so great, and how big was his impact on the way you played and how you live your life?
So again, going back to relationships, he was my second coach in college, Coach Mahoney, and he was obviously the coach. I mean, he got on you when you screwed up, and he praised you when you did good. But outside of the lines, when we're off the field, you still hear from him. He still call you up, text you, see how everything's going, making sure you're in class, making sure you're taking care of your books and everything. That was the sticker. It's always stuck out to me. That's one of the big reasons why I got into coaching, because of the type of coach that he is. He definitely left a big impression on me.
And that impression came from the amount that he cared about you, right? And
exactly, yes, yep.
How, I mean, that coach to player relationship, how much he loved you and invested in your success, right? I mean, I think that's the common denominator of the great coaches in our world today, is that they are invested in athlete success, both on and off the field.
And off the field, exactly. Absolutely. And I've had the coaches before that it was all about football, and I mean, that's all good and well. And then after, off the field or outside of the season, during the off season, I mean, didn't hear from him, never talked to him. that's not who he was. He would give you the shirt off his back. You knew that he loved it. If for whatever reason, if you were in trouble in the middle of the night, you could call him up and he would come and help you out. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of coach that he, and like I said, it goes back to the relationships.
Right. Well, and the first couple of years of my career, we had one coaching staff led by a coach who wasn't the most disciplined in the world and who cared about his players, but wasn't as invested in their success as, the coach that you're talking about right now. He cared about winning football games, and, that was, everything outside of that was kind of extra. And I didn't realize, how much that affected the program until I had a coach come in that was that was the complete opposite, that was fully vested in what you were doing both on and off the field, and set rules and process to make sure that you stuck by those rules. And it's just, you could tell the level of commitment and the level of buy-in and how the things off the field actually affected the things on the field over the long term, because it's everything that you do day in and day out that adds up to create this blend of a great football athlete and a great team. And so it's interesting to hear that and to compare, what those differences are. And I think it is just the simple fact of coaches got to invest in players.
And I was thinking the same thing. It's not just the off the field stuff, and then it's separately the on the field stuff. Everything blends together. So the person that he's vesting in, he's also vesting in that player. The push-ups or the up downs that you have to do for jumping off sides, and he actually makes you do them. That's just not a rule, that something to scare you. That is instilling discipline, which crazily converts to you actually doing the homework or making sure that you are where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. So it does carry over 100%, and everything flips back and forth. And when it really comes down to it, and it's probably cliche, but football is life. Like everything in the game of football, you can take that and convert it to something in the real world.
100%. And that's the appeal against all of the parents and people that are trying to urge kids not to play football at a young age. Now, obviously, I'm well aware of the risks and the potential head trauma that can happen to an athlete at a young age. But to the flip side of that, the benefits are really wide ranging, just from a perception of the level of commitment, the level of hard work, how to be able to work with the team and work with others, how to be criticized, and how to be able to take that criticism and improve your skill.
Yes.
There's just so many things that the game of football teaches, even more than other sports around the world, because it is the ultimate team sport in the world.
Absolutely. Cannot agree more.
And one of the models that, or one of the program, models that you like to implement and structure your programs off of is CDR. And what does CDR mean to you?
So CDR is commitment, discipline, and responsibility. Commitment that's like one of the first, and that's huge to me because that kind of goes hand in hand with loyalty. If you're committed to the program, if you're committed to what we're doing, then you're gonna do what you say you're gonna do. You're gonna be where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there. You're gonna do all the little things on and off the field. You're gonna do all that stuff right, which kind of flows right into discipline. Because if you're disciplined, then you're gonna do everything that it takes to be committed to the program, or committed. And again, it can go to life as well. But you're gonna do all those things. Waking up and being in the gym at 5 a.m. for mat drills, that crazily flips over to waking up at 5 a.m. so you can be on the job at 6 a.m. That's discipline.
Exactly.
And then you roll into responsibility, and that's more or less just taking ownership for what you do, taking pride in what you do. It kind of encompasses everything in your life. If you screw up, owning responsibility for if you were late, and knowing that there's consequences, whether that's good or bad consequences for each action that you have.
Well, and I really like the last one of responsibility and what you said in regards to ownership, in a sense of it's so easy to point fingers on the football field and in the game of life and saying, this isn't my fault, to look externally and say, oh, that quarterback threw me a shitty pass, or that offensive lineman misses block. I played great. I just had, et cetera, et cetera. But you're pointing all those fingers, but how do you take back and bring that inwards and look at yourself and say, well, regardless of what happened to him, how could have I performed better? Right?
Exactly. And that's what it always is about, man. It's always about self-reflection. Just like you said, what could I have done differently that might have modified the outcome that we just had? Yeah, I don't know. There's a guy that walked up and the center didn't see him, and I tried to tell him, but the quarterback snapped the ball and it was just too late. But it was the center's fault. The center was supposed to make the call, and he didn't make the call, so I didn't take him, and the quarterback just got knocked out. I mean, it might have been the center's fault, but you could have made the call as well. That's again, it's a communication thing on the field, but it's like you said, it's just taking ownership of the things that you do. When it's your fault, you own up to it. When it's something bad, you take responsibility for it. When it's something good, you point the finger the other way and like, that's the guy. He did a great job.
Well, and I think teams with extreme ownership set themselves apart, and that's really one of the main differences between the great and the very average teams, is when you have a culture of extreme ownership from the coaching staff on down, right? Because if the coaching staff isn't owning up to me calling a bad play on 4th and 3, no, that was my quarterback's fault, or the head coach saying, defensive coordinator, why did you not stop? Call this defense when it was 4th and 10, or the players starting to accuse the coaches. Well, we're not playing well because of the coaches. We're not playing well because of the strength staff or the athletic staff. When you have that culture of pointing fingers, that you don't have a chance at your program being successful.
Right. And that's, they always say that everything goes great when you're winning, and losing is when you see what you're really made of, and that's normally when it happens. Because like I said, it's easy to have great attitudes, and it's easy to win without all the bickering and fussing and everything. But as soon as you lose or start losing, or something goes downhill, if you don't have the response to the adversity, that's when the finger point comes out, and it's like, man, I could have 200 yards right now, but such and such isn't doing this, and such isn't doing that, and it's all their fault, and it's not on me. I'm doing everything I can, but it's them. They need to get their stuff fixed. So and like you said, it starts from the top. Regardless whether it's believable or not. The coaches the players exemplify the coaches, and they do, especially with young teams. They learn how to respond from the coaches. That's where that's picked up from. So if the kids, if they're pointing fingers and their attitudes suck when adversity hits, it might be one of those you got to look in the mirror things.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, and as we transition to the end of the podcast, Chrys, you're an offensive guy. What is your favorite offensive set that you've had the most success with in the past? Let's get into X's and O's here a little bit.
So, hands down, I always default to no huddle offense, fast paced. It doesn't necessarily have to be a certain set. Although I do like to spread the field horizontally and vertically. I also like to mix it up. So I'm a multiple formation guy. I mean, I'd love to have 5 plays and have 80 formations and just make you cover stuff and just create mismatches. But when I'll never forget it, I was playing at Tulane, and we were in the dome, and we were playing Southern Miss, and it's fast pace is just something that we did, and it was something that we practiced day in, day out. So it's natural for us. It was natural for us to do that. So we're driving down the field, and bam, we flip that switch and we go no huddle, and we run a play. Ball, whistle's blown, ball's dead, get right back to the line. And we are ready to go in 5-6 seconds. The nose guard was jumping up and down, yelling at the sideline because he did not know what the call was. So we are literally about to snap the ball, and he's jumping up and down. And when I saw that, I'm like, holy crap, like this stuff actually works. And I mean, you can demolish people, especially if they're not ready for it, or more if they're not conditioned for it, because it's easy to run it in the first quarter and have a little bit of success with it, and the defense recover. Completely different story when you're in the third and fourth quarter, and now they're starting their bodies are starting to wear down a little bit. That discipline is starting to lack a little bit, and you go fast tempo, and they start breathing hard, and all of a sudden they start forgetting stuff, or they jump off sides. That's when you really take control of the defense, and you kind of make them do what you want to do.
Well, it seems like that's where all of football is going, right? I mean, particularly college football. I mean, what's the percentage of programs that run no huddle now? I mean, it's got to be
right
above 50%.
It's a pretty, and I was upset when they tried to come out and stop no, it's the unfair advantage to the defense. It ain't an unfair advantage to the defense. Y'all need to line up and get set.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I do. That's always been my favorite. Just watching how guys respond to that, and just how well it can be executed, because that's the other thing. You can't run no huddle and jump off sides. You can't run no huddle and jog to the ball. It's a full-fledged sprint. I mean, you're moving everywhere. So I mean, you're on the bounce. So it's definitely my favorite.
And what is your favorite? I mean, what's your run game like out of that no huddle?
So a lot of the stuff that I do is based off of, when I was at Tulane, we had, our OC was Rich Rodriguez. A lot of the stuff was based off of the offense that he ran at West Virginia, Arizona. He did a lot of good stuff, and it's kind of like it's a mix of like Oregon, but then you have some stuff where you can run that 2-back or the 2 tight end set. It depends on who you're playing and what kind of matchup or mismatch that you think that you can get out of it. As far as run game goes, I always base my run game around the offensive line. So typically, if I have the offensive lineman for it, I like doing smash mouth. I'm a huge power ISO. Just line up and smash them, make them stop you.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. I'm more of a pass guy myself, being a receiver all my career.
I would have never thought it.
But you got to have the run to open up the pass, obviously.
That's right.
Absolutely. And I've seen your offense in action at the All-Star Bowl. I'm a big fan of it myself. And what are your goals within the football world actually now that you got done playing at Tulane, had a short stint in the NFL, then got into a little high school coaching, and now you've taken a year off or so. What's next for you in the football world?
So I'll start. I've really taken the time off just for the kids, just to spend time with them. I have a 13-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter, so it's kind of that crucial time. Just being able to spend time and be involved in their sports, because that's one of the things I realized when I was coaching the last high school that I was the head coach at. It was run pretty much like a small college, and it takes time away from the family. But just having that time to be able to do the things that need to be done, just as a dad, and spend time with them. As they start to get older, I'm gonna start to phase back in a little bit and start doing some stuff here and there, and hopefully wind up doing some more OC stuff at some of the local high schools.
Awesome. Well, it seems like for guys like you and I, every time we think that we may have gotten away from the sport or the sport's getting away, it seems to pull us back in. It
sucks you right back in.
Sucks you right back in, and obviously it's because of
Absolutely.
the incredible impact that it's had on both of our lives, and the impact that you and the knowledge that you can provide these young athletes is really phenomenal. I've seen it firsthand at our camps in Miami, our events internationally. The kids just they gain so much from listening to your knowledge of the offense and offensive line, and I'm looking forward to working with you many years in the future, my man.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time again, and thanks, man. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
All right. Well, that is a wrap for this episode of the Football Excellence Podcast. We appreciate you guys' support. Chrys, take care and talk soon, brother.